All right, welcome everybody. We'll see how many more folks join us here, but a couple of little housekeeping things before we get started. Hopefully, I just sent out a note not too long ago that these sessions, Bob had asked about it last time, and I talked to the guys at ETA, and they're going to award half, 1/2 hour or half a CEU for each of these sessions. So for the ETA certified, and I see then it qualifies. So since a lot of you guys join every single week, that's a quick way of getting your ETA education certification renewal CEUs, which is a good thing. And but you need to have a certificate, so I'm going to be posting them, the videos. I already do post the videos, but on the PV solar training website, in the online training, there will be links and you can go in for the various sessions and print out your certificate. So it's just a PDF file. So, and speaking of that, I see Eric. Eric is in the process of joining us here, and Eric is probably our newest PV level 1 certified person. So congratulations, you, Eric.
Yay, thank you.
Yeah, so you just got it this week. So, and so anyway, that's the thing about the CEUs I just mentioned. CEUs available on these meetings. I also wanted to say there's a webinar tomorrow that I think you might be interested in, hosted by Renview. And I posted the link for that session for registration in the chat. So if you want to join that, you can sign up there. It starts, I believe, at 1 o'clock Eastern time. So that would be, I think it's going to be a good session. I'm going to sign in for it. Bob had brought up one item to address. Anybody else have anything? We'll touch on it after I hit the news. Bill, you got something to add in?
Yeah, I have 4 questions. Is it the right time to ask those?
Okay, well, yeah, let's jump on that. Go ahead. Okay.
I just want to, in passing, say that Gabe and I, Gabe is on this call, run our class off of an off-grid system. We got a lithium battery and an inverter. And I think that's very effective in terms, actually a lithium battery with a battery management system. That's one item. The other item, I started talking about sun hours last night, and I noticed the chart that I have for Houston has a significant discrepancy than what is shown on PV watts, right? The first column on PV watts is sun hours, kilowatt hours per meter squared per day. And there's a big discrepancy, and I wondered whether anybody has any comments on that.
This is, you're talking about like a solar installation map that you're looking at?
Well, it's what I have is a chart for Houston broken down on a monthly basis for panels angled at latitude minus 15, latitude plus 15, and the numbers just don't match the first column in PV watts. Mm-hmm. And I don't have a clue why. I mean, I'm inclined to go with PV watts because it may be that, I don't know, maybe the climate's changing and the chart I have is dated. I just don't know.
Yeah, I've used those solar insolation maps that are usually color coded, you know, and those things are so spotty, you know, they're just, it's bad data. I'd be with you. I would go with PV watts over something else because that data is updated constantly. So I would just think it's more reliable.
It's NREL based. Yeah. The other thing, which, you know, Gabe went through a great discussion of how he sizes batteries and solar for his and inverter for his off-grid system. And I can't exactly remember. You determine watt hours based on your typical load, how you size a battery for the application. And I could probably look it up somewhere if we have time for that. And the fourth item, and Gabe can attest to this, the subject came up last night about NAPCEP certification and ETA certification. And I'll be honest, I don't know the difference between the two, and I wondered whether you might expand upon that a little bit.
Sure thing. Yeah, as far as battery bank sizing, typically the formula on that is going to be you determine your system voltage, you divide the daily load demands by system voltage, and you're going to end up with daily amp hour requirements. So, you know, if you've got 9 kWh, 9 kilowatt hours per day, you divide that by 48 volts or whatever it is, you end up with an amp hour. Then you would figure out how many days of autonomy you want, or what fraction of a day. And then you would also determine the depth of discharge that you're going into the system. So that's another D rate factor, basically. So you divide that by the depth of discharge. And then the last step is you divide it by the inverter efficiency, because that's the only piece of equipment between the battery and the load. So usually voltage drop and things like that aren't going to be a problem there. And that should give you your battery size in amp hours.
Okay.
Although lithium ion batteries are typically rated in kilowatt hours. So it might be just simpler to say, hey, I've got 9 kWh or 9 kilowatt hours daily load. This is a 10 kilowatt hour battery. That'll meet one day. Because I think they factor in all of those things, depth of discharge and things of that nature. You may have to derate it for the inverter efficiency, but that'd be about it. So
Great, thank you.
sure. And your last question, what was that about? Bill, what was the last thing? You're muted again. I still show you muted.
Yeah, it was ETA certification.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the ETA certification, basically there's the level 1 certification, the level 2 certification. Level 1 is designed to take somebody from zero to having a certain level of knowledge in the residential installation world, primarily. Level 2 focuses a bit more on project management and commercial. So those are the distinctions between ETA's level 1, level 2. NABCEP has several. They have them for inspectors, they have them for designers, they have them for salespeople, but their primary one is the installer certification. And that certification does anticipate a certain amount of experience in the field before you would qualify to sit for that exam. So you have to demonstrate essentially 3 installs before you're eligible to sit for the NABCEP certification. So it's not a 0 to 60 kind of thing. It's a 30 to 60 kind of, you know, you've got to have experience. So ETA in the community college level is a little bit better because you're taking students who necessarily don't have experience and getting them a certification. Now, NABCEP confuses it a little bit because they also have their associates program, which is not considered a certification program. It is a certificate program. And people have trouble distinguishing between certification and certificate. But basically in the world of regulatory officials, it's night and day. So if a jurisdiction requires that you be certified, that NABCEP associates thing will not qualify as a certification. It is just simply an entry-level certificate. You could show somebody as a prospective employer or whatever, yeah, I went through this course and I got a certificate. So those are the differences. I have a document I put together where we go through all the different aspects of the programs to say which is which. But I would say the NABCEP installer program falls closer to the level 1 program, just with an experiential requirement. Whereas ETA says hands-on experience, which can be got in a classroom, will suffice. So, you know, it's a different philosophy is all there. Yeah, Bob?
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Gabe,
I
go ahead.
was just going to follow up on that and say and ask for our students who would like to pursue a career at an entry level with a solar installer, which would you recommend?
Well, I'll tell you that the solar installers typically are more familiar with NABCEP than they are with ETA. But my experience is any solar installer, once they see, they're fine with either or. I mean, mostly at this point, they're just happy to get anybody who fogs a mirror when they hold it up to their mouth. So you know, they're going to take you. And if you show up and if you know what you're talking about, they're going to keep you, you know. So I'd say either or will work, but you may have to do a little bit of education to them. If you're talking about in the community college world, they're very much more aware of ETA, because ETA is a bigger organization. They have about 90 different certifications that they deal with, and they're integrated into the community college world to a pretty large extent through their electronics and their fiber optics and their communications certifications. So it just, I guess, depends on who you're talking to, but either or will work, I think. Yeah, Bob?
Two things. First of all, way back when I was looking, talking to NASA, they said I can't even take the course unless I have 3 installs under my belt.
Yeah.
They won't even talk to me until I have that. In Illinois, that equates to about $500 of payoff to installers to say that
To say that you've worked on their systems. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, it's a little chicken and egg kind of thing. You got to install before you get certified, but you got to be certified before you can install. You know, that's a problem in some places.
You opened up a door here. Temporarily, I'm looking for a job to do all of the designing and stuff for a person, do the purchasing and be that guy to be the hub on a company, a third-party company. And I ran into 2 things that stopped me cold from getting a job. Number one, my age, which is on the internet all over the place. And second, everybody's looking for a full-time plus type of person, energetic in it, and I'm not a full-time person. So I'm just saying that the market is like 99.9% full-time. And if you're not full-time, then
Yeah. And they also are really looking for installers to climb up on roofs. That's where they're looking
Number
for
one.
folks. And, you know, then they would take the best ones and move them into management or move them into design or whatever. But yeah, that's a bit of a young person's game when you're getting around, climbing around on roofs. So that can be problematic. But they also treat them like disposable parts. So they want they want it both ways. They want to have people come to work for them at their convenience, but then they get all kinds of bent out of shape when those people decide to go somewhere else, you know? So
I applied for a job out of an outfit that's in Kansas City that is doing tri-state areas, installs all over the place. I can't imagine them wanting a person like to do they're basically looking for the purchasing guy.
yeah.
Which I can do. Why am I going to be all over the place? He hired his girlfriend.
Yeah, well, that's true too. I mean, when I used to work at the university, they'd always write the job description to match the resume of the person they'd already decided they're going to hire. So, you know, you play that game. So let's get to your item there, Bob, about batteries at a residential install. And you're talking about trying to have some sort of climate controlled box to put them in outdoors. And you had mentioned maybe burying it to use the thermal mass of the earth to provide that climate control, which I don't think is a bad idea. The variation I would say on that though, is rather than burying it, I would tend to lean towards mounding the earth around it in some way, so that you don't deal with groundwater issues. So you're essentially elevating and using the thermal mass of the earth. And I guess I would use my experience with building earthships. if I were thinking about such a thing and the customer is willing, you can take old automobile tires, put it around, fill them with dirt, and, you know, put an insulated cover on it, and you've basically got a buried cabinet without having the groundwater issues there. So something to consider, although in some neighborhoods that might not be considered the best look. But, you know, I'm more into that kind of stuff than most, so who knows?
Jay, how thick would it have to be as far as the coverage?
Well, the earth, if you're putting in tires, that's 2 feet of earth. It depends on where the frost line is in your location. So down in Houston, of course, that'd be more than enough, but up in Minnesota, it might be not quite enough. So you might have to go with 2. But as I mentioned in previous, I really think we're going to start seeing some commercial cabinets that incorporate, you know, venting and heating and all of that kind of stuff built into them, just for that reason, that if we're going to have to put the batteries outdoors, and batteries work better in a certain stable temperature, then we're going to have these cabinets that provide that stable temperature.
So what's the temperature for lithium ion?
Well, I think all batteries aren't they all rated at, trying to think, is it 30 degrees Celsius or is it 20 degrees Celsius? I think it's 30.
Yeah, I think it's 30, Jay.
Yeah. So, you know, that's going to be in the neighborhood of, well, I don't know, 30 seems a little high. That'd be 80 degrees or so. So maybe it's 20 degrees. That seems better to me, 20 degrees Celsius. Yeah, because if you look up what is C20 rating, seems to me that's a rate of discharge at 20 degrees Celsius.
I've got some lead acid batteries that, and my inverters, the temperature compensation is set up for 77 Fahrenheit, which is about 25 degrees C.
Yeah.
So I was talking lithium, so that's a different ball game, but.
Yeah, lithium are less responsive, less affected by temperature.
Yeah.
But so my guess is 20 to 30 range would be fine regardless. But you know, the earth, if you bury them in the ground, it's going to usually be in the 55 to 60 degree temperature range, you know, year round. That's the ideal. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we can do that as research. Any other questions before I hit the news of the week here? All right. Couple of news items I found interesting. One I just picked because I knew Don might be on the call and it's a Kentucky thing. University of Kentucky is buying 44% of the output from a 125 megawatt solar array located in Mccracken County near Paducah, Kentucky. Is that a place?
So, it's a city in the west part of Kentucky down towards the foot. But so are they buying the output or are they just getting like RECs for the, you know,
They're buying the output. They're figuring 1/3 of their power generation will now be from solar. So it's basically a power purchase agreement. Now,
That's
obviously,
what I mean.
they're not getting the molecule or the
they're not getting the real power. They're just getting credit for it on the.
Yeah, it's kind of effectively the same thing. From the totality standpoint, it's the same thing. But from an electron to electron standpoint, not so much.
Jay, you're just going with the PR guys.
That's right. I bought into the whole thing, man. I drank the Kool-Aid. So, although when we get to the thing, I think, Don, you're going to think I'm all of a sudden become a QAnon guy. So,
Let's
all
see
right.
what happens.
So, all right. NREL is studying. They just announced a study that they've been doing regarding light-induced degradation, which is referred to as LID. This is a lot of the wearing out of panels, losing effectiveness over time. It accounts for about 2% loss typically over the lifetime of a solar panel. And what they've kind of identified is they think it's related to the use of boron in the doping of silicon panels. So they're experimenting with some other things other than boron to, the doping is where you dope one level with one element, another level with a different element, and it basically makes the panel want to give up electrons or absorb electrons in the two different levels. So I always think of them like magnetizing on opposite poles, the two tops, so that the electron's more likely to jump. So that might see an improvement of up to 2% if they can stabilize that and get rid of it altogether, which seemed like an interesting note. There's a Colorado utility working with Sonnen, S-O-N-N-E-N battery system. They've created a program they call WattSmart. And what I found interesting here is essentially they're encouraging customers with solar arrays to install batteries. And they will pay them $400 per kilowatt if they commit to 4 years of allowing them access to the battery for management of the grid. And they'll also pay them $15 per kilowatt per year. And guarantee they won't reduce it to less than 50% depth of discharge. All right, so basically they're saying we want to install batteries on the grid, but we don't want to buy them. We want you to buy them, but we'll subsidize them as long as we can use them, which is a smart thing for the utility because these batteries certainly cost more than $400 for that amount of storage. The one confusing thing, and I've seen this in a lot of articles I've read about battery, is they'll often refer to them as kilowatts. Yet I think they mean kilowatt hours, but I'm not 100% sure that's what they mean, because a lot of the battery systems incorporate inverters with them, which do measure kilowatt output. So does anybody know for sure? Are they just journalists who don't know what they're talking about? Or is it something else? Any comments from the gang on that?
I have seen incorrectly the use of megawatt hours.
Megawatt hours on what? On solar arrays or something?
Instead of kilowatt hours, it comes up megawatt hours.
Oh, that would be a heck of a battery. So
it is, and I see that. Not that I see it often. I mean,
Yeah.
People don't know.
So do you think I'm correct in assuming kilowatt hours on these battery things? I saw a couple of people nod their head.
That would be the only thing that makes sense, I would think, Jay. I mean, you're talking about an amount of storage you're going to have in the battery,
I would think.
not a rate of production.
Yeah. Yeah, although, shoot, I'd pay, yeah, it has to be kilowatt hours, because if they're paying $400 for a kilowatt,
Yeah,
that's
no,
unlimited.
there's no way that that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, it's unlimited because
Yeah.
how many hours are you going to draw,
Yeah, yeah.
So,
If
yeah,
it looks like a duck,
that's right. Okay, another thing I
Hey,
saw.
Jay?
Yeah.
Jay, what was that article?
I don't remember exactly. It's in the, I think it was, it's PV World or Solar World, their latest news column. If you just Google latest solar news, it'll come up as one of the top options. But I've seen it in multiple articles where they're referring to battery bank, but they always refer to it in kilowatts. So I see that all the time. And it's just wrong. They're probably just used to doing that with solar arrays. So they assume it's the same for batteries, but it's not, because batteries have storage. They store energy, they don't store power, right? Whereas solar panels produce power, but they don't produce energy. You need time for that. So, okay, there's a website, solarrecycle.org, which is interesting. It's a group that is essentially bringing to one spot all of the solar recycling centers or places you can take solar materials to recycle them. So it's just getting started. I looked at it. There are a couple of facilities here in Ohio. So I thought that was interesting if you want to recycle your panels. It talks about batteries, but I didn't see any battery items in there. So just getting started, but it's one of those things we talked about in the past, how solar is going to get better at that. Mike, you had a comment?
Yeah, last spring, I had a panel that was delivered shattered. And last spring, I live in Northeast Ohio. My local recycling center had an electronics recycling event, and I called them in advance and said, will you take my solar panel? And they said, yes. I took it in there, and they had this huge roll-off dumpster that everything was going in, including my solar panel. So where's the ones you're talking about in Ohio? I didn't, I mean, maybe they don't take one panel. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. One of them was in Perrysville. I remembered that. I think it was First Solar.
That's out by Toledo, right?
Yeah, I think it's at that First Solar
First Solar plant,
manufacturing
yeah.
facility.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So they're probably having a drop-off area more for PR, I'm sure, than anything at the moment. But that was one. There was another one. I don't remember what it was. But if you look on solarrecycle.org, they had a little map of the US, and you can click on the different states and it'll jump you down. But it's just getting started. So, this is the beginning of a good thing. LG just announced they've got a new kind of panel. I had heard these were on the horizon. I hadn't heard any coming, but they're calling them gapless panels. So basically what they're saying is these solar panels, instead of laying the cells side by side, they're overlapping them by half a millimeter. So there is no space on the panel between the cells anymore. And that apparently has a number of beneficial effects, but one of them would be you get more cells and less space, because you don't have that wasted space between them. But they were saying things like, increases the resiliency of the wiring and different things, which I don't disagree with them. I just didn't understand how it would do such a thing. But
Is the panel frame the same size, and they just make it more output?
Probably, and then they would, because those have gotten to be they're always off, an inch or two. So I guess I shouldn't say probably. They'll be similar in size. They're usually about 1 meter wide by 2 meters tall, in that range, or 32 inches by 60, whatever. Or the long panels, the 72 cell panels, are going to be a little longer. But yeah, they'll be more efficient, more watts for the area regardless. And this panel is a half cut panel. So the cells are actually half cells that are overlapping. So I don't know if that makes a difference, whatever.
Are they using their own racking, or do they use standard racking?
I think it looked like a standard panel. It's just the internal construction of it. So if you look at even one of those jet black panels, you can sort of see the cells are separate and distinct on the monocrystallines. And what they're doing is, in their construction, they're just overlapping them a bit. So I had heard that was coming. It's interesting to see it's here.
Okay, so I'm sorry, you're saying that the cells themselves are overlapping. I was thinking that you're saying the panels were going to be.
No, just the cells within the
Gotcha.
panel.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's good. If it wasn't clear, that's good. Okay, those were the industry news I saw. Did anybody else have any things they ran across that were doing? Yeah, Bob?
Going back to the first item about the boron.
Uh-huh.
Panels, when you first put them up, lose what, about 6%, 7%?
Not right away. They usually say 0.5% a year is the standard for warranty purposes. I've found maybe you lose 1% in the first year, and then the rate of degrading falls off from there. It's usually not as bad. They're saying over the course of the 20-year life or 25-year life, the light induced degradation will mean about 2% loss over that 20-year period. So most of it comes up front, I would, because that seems to be the way these things are affected, but it will lose a little bit over time.
I'm sorry to say, not what I saw, but I will send you the information from the panels, which shows maybe a 3-4% at the beginning within the first 3 months, and then going into the slope that you're talking about.
Is this from like an installation that you did?
That's the ratings that I have on all the solar panels I looked at, which I will send you the ratings.
Yeah, I'd like to see
And-
that because that
Yeah.
that seems pretty extreme.
That's right, it is extreme. And so what I was trying to say is they're finding out that that boron material is possible the cause of that happening, and they're trying different materials to get away from that loss. But to get a panel after 25 years that is lost less than 11, 12% is outstanding.
Yeah, and that's typically, of course, 0.5% over 25 years, which is usually the warranty rating, would mean a 12.5% loss over that 25-year period. So, whether most of it comes up front or it happens, in a straight line, I think you're right. Most of it does come up front, but I would be surprised it comes in the first 3 months.
So-
That would be.
So I'm asking that you don't print your retraction on page 64 of the newspaper.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. I'll wait for the letters of the editor to set me straight, right? So people are always.
Hey, Jay, I dropped it in the chat. I had the spec sheet from LG Chem's home battery.
Uh-huh.
Actually much wider operating temperature than we were discussing.
Oh, yeah, -10 to 45. Yeah, that's their
Yeah.
operating temperature. The question is, what temperature does it work best in?
It's at recommended 15 to 30 C.
15 to 30? Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So, all right. The item I decided, and only because I was listening to a podcast, and they were talking about the bills that are in front of Congress and how it's the end of the world, and Joe Manchin is the Antichrist and all of that. Yeah, Don?
Jay, this might be what you're covering, but over the weekend, Joe Manchin said he's not going for the what is it, $150 billion for the utility level. Is that what you were going to cover?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was
Okay,
going to cover.
Never mind.
Yeah.
I was waiting at the end, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, that's it. Because of course, in these podcasts and in the general media, we hear these things, and I've gotten into the bad habit of saying, well, what does that mean? Because that always gets you in trouble when they tell
Terrible
you.
question.
Yeah, and so it was the $150 billion, the green energy thing, and there's one group that's saying, oh, it's the end of the world if we don't have this. It's another group saying this is just another example of, those liberals wanting to subsidize, greenie activity.
But they're
Yeah.
still keeping the credits and stuff. This is just the utility level stuff.
Yeah. Well, and those credits, you're talking like RECs and stuff.
Well,
Those are
I'm talking
only-
like credits for the individuals who go out and buy, like most of our people.
Oh, yeah.
They're going to keep
Yeah.
all those. This was just extra payments to solar, or not to solar, but to utilities to more quickly convert to green energy.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, because I'm no big fan of Joe Manchin, but I suspect if I were a senator from southeastern Ohio, I would probably be the Antichrist at this point, because I was looking at the bill. They're saying $150 million to incentivize utilities to adopt billion, yes. To adopt clean energy or green energy, carbon neutral, which includes nuclear as far as they're concerned, quicker. So, and they say they will reward utilities for installing green, punish them for not. That's all I ever saw in like 27 different articles that I looked at. Finally, I found an article from Reuters that says, well, how are they doing this? What is the mechanism? Well, what they're saying is they're setting a target of 4% annualized growth over the previous year. So if you as a utility, if you're producing 4% more, that's the goal. Anything over 1.5%, we will pay you $150 per megawatt hour. They said megawatts, but it's got to be megawatt hour. Okay, so
That's 15 cents a kilowatt hour, which is about what I'm paying for my electricity.
yeah, so they're giving you quite a hefty subsidy for anything between the 1.5 to the 4.
Is
That's,
that going to the ratepayers?
no, that's going to the utility. No,
That's what I'm
don't
saying. Yes,
don't
I knew
think
the
any of
answer
this
was
comes
yes.
to the ratepayer. All right. If you
More than
fall,
it costs them to make, it's more than it costs them to make it, that's for sure, with the way
Yeah,
they're making
yeah.
it now.
Yeah,
okay, so if they fall below the 4% annualized growth, then they will be fined $40 per megawatt hour. So that's the stick. Okay, the carrot, 150, the stick, $40. Now, I was thinking, okay, on the surface, that sounds fine, but the first thing that needled at me was, if you tell me it's got to be 4% growth over the previous year, and I've got a big project that's going to grow 17%, well, I'm not going to do that in 1 year, because next year now I got to do another 4%, another 4%. So it would disincentivize large projects. It would incentivize only growing at a 4% and no more, no less kind of thing, because they've set that target. Well, then I was looking and it said, you know, the market share growth of renewables has grown an average annualized 15% per year for the last 5 years. So this targeted goal is 1/4 of what we're experiencing without such a program. Yet now we're going to disincentivize these utilities to grow at their current rate under the auspice of telling us, everybody, that we're incentivizing them. So we're going to cut the rate of growth. And if we look in 2020 worldwide, last year, we grew 45% in renewables worldwide in 1 year during a pandemic. At our current rate, wind and solar will reach 45% of the grid by 2030. Well, now we've had some discussions in the past saying without storage, it's probably not practical to go above that. We need to incorporate storage into that. But what's interesting is, because of the wonderful world of compound interest, they'd hit 100% by 2033. So, you know, we don't need the incentives. In fact, it seems to me these incentives are going to disincentivize the current growth. And yet they're going to then spend $150 billion essentially subsidizing utilities for doing what they were going to do anyway, yet doing it worse than they would do had there been no program to begin with. So suddenly I'm sitting on Joe Manchin's houseboat saying, well done, Joe, you know, this is not exactly the program I would map out. You know, there is a carrot and stick approach already. If you think about marketplace, France and Germany in the last 5 years, renewable energy has seen 178% return on investment, where fossil fuels have seen a negative 20% return. In the UK, the renewables got a 75%, whereas fossil fuels an 8%. And in the US, renewables 200%, with fossil fuels at about a 97%. So,
Jay,
yeah.
Is that utilities or is that individuals? The only reason I ask, because I know in Germany, they were over subsidizing them for years. I knew people in Germany who were all putting them on their roofs. They said, sure, I'll do it. They're paying for me, not only paying for me to do it, but they're paying more on top of what the real rates are.
Yeah. Well, these returns were just, they didn't differentiate between utilities. They were investment level, I assume. So my guess is they're larger projects.
Okay.
But yeah, what you were saying is correct. Although I think that was by design, because there was a step down on the incentive program really from the beginning.
It was, but it was by design until the other ratepayers figured out that they were subsidizing all these other guys, which became a bit of an issue.
Yeah, it always is. Yeah. I found out I'm subsidizing the fossil fuel industry. That's a big issue to me, but nobody seems to care, you know? So, yeah, so I would just sort of make the argument at this point, and you guys feel free to agree or disagree, obviously, but it feels to me like, yeah, government should incentivize renewable energy, but this particular program stinks to high heaven as far as I'm concerned. I mean, the way of incentivizing renewable energy is not to give money to people to do what they were already going to do. You know, that's not an incentive. You know, it seems to me at the consumer level, the incentives are a little bit more visible, tangible, effective, you know, but probably harder to administer. And you don't get huge political contributions from First Energy for handing over a check for all of this money. So, or the nuclear industry. I'm sure the nuclear industry would love this. So, anybody have any comments on that, or the state of our economy, or the state of our government?
I heard that they were maybe considering a carbon tax instead, or, you know, it's kind of far-fetched at this
They
point.
proposed that for years. It would be, you're right, but they keep proposing that and it never really goes anywhere, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have sort of mixed feelings on that as well. It's sort of like I feel like in theory I'm a big supporter of government in theory, but in practice not so much. You know, it's I think I've said before, my philosophy is I'm a liberal in that I think government has a positive role to play in our lives, but I'm a conservative in that I've never actually seen it happen. So, you know, those are the theory versus the reality. Carbon taxes, yeah, it's one way of capturing the externalized costs of a behavior. You know, when you manufacture something and dump it into the river, you know, the waste products, there is a cost to society for your behavior there, and that should be built into the price of the product. You know, you should be not doing it to begin with, but if you're going to do it, somebody's got to clean it up, and the person who should clean it up is the one who made the mess. You know, so how do you best administer that? I don't know. Government never seems to do a very effective job of allocating the cost to the person who caused it. They pay for it in the end, but how do we do that? Carbon credit may be the best solution available to us. I don't know, but
The proceeds was going to go to the ratepayers. I mean, we're going to get them, they're going to pay it back to us somehow. What the carbon tax.
After
That's
taking
what
a
they-
cut, maybe.
yeah, I heard
They
it was
take
a very convoluted solution, because they were saying we're going to impose a carbon credit, but by doing that, they're going to pass along the cost of this carbon credit to the ratepayers. So now we're going to provide a tax credit to the ratepayers to make them whole. And if, by the way, you're producing gasoline, you're exempted because we don't want the political fallout from raising gas prices. So this seems like, you know, the little old lady who swallowed a fly, you know, I mean, you're trying to solve one problem and you're creating all these political problems and trying to solve those. And I don't know, I was ranting to my wife about something, and I remember I was saying something about bureaucracy, and I said, like, bureaucracy is the thing that says, in order to be seen standing by the road, you must wear a red shirt. And now the department is set up to make sure everybody wears red shirts, you know, instead of remembering that the whole goal was to be seen, you know, and there might be other solutions. So now they enforce the red shirt mandate, you know, and lose sight of why this regulation was there to begin with. So anyway, it just reminds me back when I was managing people, and we'd have these managers meetings, and the managers would go, we should come up with this rule or that rule or this thing or whatever. And I'd always say, God, I hope we hired people smart enough to get around those rules. You know, it's like, I don't want to turn this place into a place I don't want to work at, you know, so let's not do that. So anyway, that was my rant against, or my pat on the back for Joe Manchin. Although I think he should get rid of the filibuster, because who cares? I mean, you know, we're not seeing much positive from the filibuster. But anybody have anything else? Any other rantings or ravings?
You'll like the filibuster when you're in the minority, Jay.
No, I don't. Not really. If I'm in the minority, I deserve to get voted down. You know? I was never a fan of consensus government. You know, because the majority of the people are wrong about everything. So, you know, it's, we
And it
need,
seems like you would like the, you know, the minority being able to slow you down. if the
yeah, but
majority-
not stopping you dead in the water. If they were all Jimmy Stewart standing up there gasping for a glass of water during a filibuster, I would be willing to support that for sheer entertainment value, to see Ted Cruz read Green Eggs and Ham 17 times. But, you know, but as it is now, it's a joke. It's just a way of not getting anything done. So,
Mhm.
although that may be the best government can do is nothing, but
I was gonna say, that's kind of a good thing.
yeah,
The less
sometimes.
they do, the better we are.
Yeah. Yep. We'll see. I don't know. I'm just glad I'm not in office. So. All right. And so are you, by the way. Glad that I'm not in office. So, all right. Anybody else have any comments? Okay, then we'll call it a day and I'll see you guys next week.
I got one quick one.
Yeah, Eric.
So, looks like I'm gonna have to hold off on my my install of solar panels. But I'm really thankful that you gave us that that solar generator book, because I think that's what I'm gonna do is my short-term interim solution for this winter, because I'm always nervous every winter about the power going out.
Yeah.
So I will be making that this year. So I'll probably be asking you some questions soon.
Sure, yeah, I think I'd suggest you get one of those nice big pull-along tool boxes where you can fit a couple of golf cart batteries in there, or get yourself some lithium-ion batteries and
Okay.
and make it work. Yeah, I'm happy to talk to you about that.
And I'm waiting to hear what Tony's offering is going to be able to do. 'Cause
Yeah, hey,
maybe I
Tony.
could use that.
Yeah,
Tony, do you think next week you could maybe provide talk about your project and the charging station, what you're looking
Sure.
at, get some feedback
Yeah.
on that?
absolutely. Yeah, that would be awesome.
Okay, so I'll leave you for the big item after the news of the week.
Awesome, Jay. Thanks, guys.
Sure thing. All right, take care.